The sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of Redemption, Arizona Territory, 1879. As Virginia Ellis stepped from the general store with a basket of supplies balanced on her arm. The weight of her impending marriage felt heavier than any load she could carry. In 3 days, she would become Mrs. Thornton, wife to the town's most powerful man, a marriage she had never wanted, arranged by her dying father to secure her future. Virginia paused to adjust her bonnet, her fingers trembling with the decision she had finally made. "Miss Ellis." "A word, if you please," called the deep voice of Benjamin Owens, the rancher who had drifted into town 6 months prior. His tall frame leaned against the hitching post, hat tipped low over his eyes. Virginia glanced around nervously before approaching. Benjamin wasn't like the other men in town. He spoke softly, listened intently, and never seemed interested in the power struggles that consumed Redemption's elite. Over the past few months, their paths had crossed often enough for her to recognize the kindness in his eyes. "Mr. Owens," she acknowledged with a nod. "I didn't expect to see you in town today." Benjamin straightened, towering over her slight frame. "I heard about your upcoming nuptials," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Thought I might offer my congratulations." Virginia clutched her basket tighter. "There's nothing to congratulate," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the creak of wagon wheels passing by. "It wasn't my choice." Benjamin's eyes softened. "I suspected as much." He glanced around before continuing. "Miss Ellis, I don't mean to overstep, but if you're in need of assistance, Miss Ellis." The shrill voice of Widow Harper cut through their conversation. "What are you doing speaking with this drifter? Your betrothed would be most displeased." Virginia stiffened. "Good day, Mr. Owens," she said formally, then turned away, the weight of the town's expectations pressing on her shoulders. That night, as Virginia sat at her vanity, brushing her chestnut hair, she made her decision. She would not marry Thornton. The man was cruel and calculating, known for breaking the spirits of those who crossed him. Her father had been blinded by Thornton's promises of financial security, never seeing the darkness behind the man's smile. At dawn, Virginia penned a letter to Thornton, refusing the marriage. She delivered it herself to his office, her chin held high despite her trembling hands. By midday, the news had spread through Redemption like wildfire. Virginia was crossing the town square when Mrs. Thornton, the would-be groom's mother, confronted her, voice raised for all to hear. "You ungrateful girl! After all my son has done for your family!" A crowd began to gather, faces familiar to Virginia since childhood now twisted with judgment. "It is against God's will to break a betrothal," proclaimed Reverend Walsh, stepping forward. "Your father's dying wish was for this union." Virginia stood her ground. "My father didn't know what kind of man your son truly is," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Mrs. Thornton's face contorted with rage. "Blasphemy! This girl has shamed our family, rejected God's plan." She turned to the growing crowd. "The law of Moses is clear about such defiance. She'll bring God's wrath upon us all," someone shouted from the crowd. Virginia's blood ran cold as she realized the dangerous turn the confrontation had taken. In this isolated territory, frontier justice sometimes reverted to ancient punishments, especially when the town's most influential family demanded retribution. "They'll stone me for refusing," Virginia said, her voice barely above a whisper as she backed away from the increasingly hostile crowd. "Then I'll stand between you and the rocks," came a firm declaration from behind her. Benjamin Owens stepped forward, positioning himself between Virginia and the mob. His hand rested casually on his holstered revolver, but there was nothing casual about the determination in his eyes. "This isn't your concern, Owens," Thornton said, appearing at the edge of the crowd. His polished boots and fine suit contrasted sharply with Benjamin's worn denim and dusty boots. "I'm making it my concern," Benjamin replied evenly. "Miss Ellis has the right to choose her own husband. This isn't the Old Testament, it's the United States of America." The sheriff pushed through the crowd. "What's all this commotion?" "This woman has broken her betrothal to my son," Mrs. Thornton said. "She must face consequences." The sheriff looked uncomfortable. "Now, Mrs. Thornton, we don't stone people in Arizona territory." "But she," Mrs. Thornton began. "Has broken no law," Benjamin interrupted. "Miss Ellis, would you allow me to escort you home?" Virginia nodded gratefully, but Thornton stepped forward. "She's not going anywhere with you, Cowboy. Virginia belongs to me." "I belong to no one," Virginia said, finding her voice at last. "My father may have arranged this match, but he's gone now, and I am my own person." Benjamin's hand tightened on his gun. "I suggest you all disperse and remember this is 1879, not biblical times." The sheriff, clearly reluctant to challenge the Thorntons but equally unwilling to permit violence, intervened. "Everyone go home. Miss Ellis, I'd advise you to consider your situation carefully. Thornton, your family's standing doesn't give you the right to force a woman to marry." As the crowd slowly disbanded with mutters and dark looks, Benjamin guided Virginia away. "My ranch is a few miles outside of town," he said quietly. "You'd be safe there until this blows over." Virginia hesitated. "I can't impose. It's not an imposition. I have a cabin separate from the main house where my ranch hand's sister stays when she visits. It would be proper." Virginia looked back at the town, at the faces watching from windows and doorways. "They'll never let this go, will they?" Benjamin shook his head. "Probably not. Thornton doesn't take rejection well. But you can't marry a man you don't love, especially not one like him." "Why are you helping me?" Virginia asked as they approached his wagon. Benjamin helped her up onto the seat. "Because everyone deserves a choice," he said simply. "And because from the moment I arrived in this town, you were the only one who showed me any kindness." As they rode away from redemption, Virginia felt something she hadn't experienced in months' hope. Benjamin's ranch was modest compared to the Thornton estate, but well-kept and thriving. A small herd of cattle grazed in the distance, and the main house stood solidly against the backdrop of mountains. "It's not much," Benjamin said as he helped her down, "but it's mine, free and clear." The cabin he mentioned was cozy and clean, with a small porch and curtained windows. "My ranch hand, Miguel, and his wife live in a cabin on the other side of the property. Elena will bring you anything you need." Virginia surveyed her temporary sanctuary. "How long do you think I'll need to stay?" "Until we figure out what to do next," Benjamin said, his expression serious. "Thornton won't give up easily." That evening, Elena brought supper to Virginia's cabin. The Mexican woman was kind-faced and motherly, despite being only a few years older than Virginia. "Señor Benjamin is a good man," Elena said as she set out the food. "He gave Miguel and me a home when no one else would hire a Mexican cowboy and his wife." "How long have you known him?" Virginia asked, curious about her rescuer. "Almost 2 years. He came from Colorado after his family's ranch was taken by the bank. Started over with nothing but determination and hard work." Elena smiled. "He speaks of you often." Virginia blushed. "He does." Elena nodded. "He says you have the kindest heart in that heartless town." Over the next few days, Virginia settled into life at the ranch. Benjamin respected her privacy but invited her to dine with him and his small staff each evening. She learned that he had lost his parents young and had been raised by an uncle who taught him ranching. The bank had foreclosed on their Colorado property after a harsh winter decimated their herd. "Why redemption?" Virginia asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. It's hardly the most welcoming place. Benjamin smiled wryly. The land was cheap and I didn't need much. Just a fresh start. He glanced at her. What about you? Why stay in a town that stifles you? Virginia sighed. My mother died when I was 12. My father raised me the best he could. But he never understood that I wanted more than just security. When he fell ill last year, Thornton offered to settle our debts in exchange for my hand. Father saw it as salvation. And you saw it as a prison, Benjamin observed. Virginia nodded. Thornton doesn't want a wife. He wants a possession. Someone to display at social gatherings and control behind closed doors. On the 5th day, the sheriff rode up to the ranch. Benjamin met him outside, hand resting near his gun. I'm not here for trouble, the sheriff said, raising his hands. Just delivering news and a warning. Thornton's filed a complaint, claiming you've kidnapped his betrothed. That's ridiculous, Benjamin said. Miss Ellis came willingly. There was no betrothal contract. You and I know that, the sheriff agreed. But Thornton has Judge Wilkins in his pocket. They're talking about sending a posse. Virginia stepped onto the porch, having overheard. I'll go back and face them, she said. I won't have you risking your life for me. No, Benjamin said firmly. Thornton's angry and humiliated. It's not safe. The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. There's more. Some of the townfolk are riled up about moral decay and frontier justice. Reverend Walsh has been preaching about biblical punishment for women who break their word. Stoning, Virginia whispered, her earlier fears confirmed. I won't let that happen, Benjamin vowed. Sheriff, you know this is wrong. The sheriff sighed. I do, but I'm just one man. Thornton practically owns that town. After the sheriff departed, Benjamin called Miguel and his other ranch hands together. We need to prepare for unwelcome visitors, he explained. Miguel, take the women to the line cabin in the north pasture. It's well hidden. Elena protested. We will not leave you to face them alone. She's right, Virginia said. This is my fight. I won't hide while others suffer for my decision. Benjamin's expression softened. Virginia, Mr. Owens. Riders coming, called one of the ranch hands from the fence line. Through the gathering dusk, they could see a group of horsemen approaching. At their head rode Thornton, his expensive suit replaced with riding clothes, a rifle across his saddle. Get inside, Benjamin ordered Virginia. All of you, positions we discussed. Virginia grabbed his arm. Benjamin, please don't do this. They'll kill you. His eyes met hers. Some things are worth fighting for, Virginia. You taught me that. Before she could respond, he gently pushed her toward the house and strode out to meet the approaching riders, alone and unarmed. Thornton reined in his horse 20 yards from where Benjamin stood. Behind him, a dozen men, some from town, others likely hired guns, sat astride their mounts. Owens, Thornton called, send out Miss Ellis, and we'll forget this unpleasantness. Miss Ellis is under my protection, Benjamin replied calmly. She's made her choice clear. Go home, Thornton. Thornton's face twisted with anger. She belongs to me. Our fathers arranged it. She belongs to herself, Benjamin countered. This isn't the Dark Ages. From her position at the window, Virginia could see Thornton's men spreading out, surrounding the ranch house. Her heart hammered in her chest as she realized the danger Benjamin had placed himself in for her sake. Last chance, Owens, Thornton warned. Step aside, or we'll remove you. Benjamin didn't budge. You'll have to kill me first. Thornton raised his rifle. So be it. The shot never came. From various positions around the property, Benjamin's ranch hands emerged, rifles trained on the intruders. Miguel had positioned men strategically, creating the impression of a much larger force. "You're outnumbered, Thornton," Benjamin said. "I don't want bloodshed on my land. Turn around and go home." Thornton's gaze darted around, assessing the situation. His followers looked less certain now, shifting nervously in their saddles. "This isn't over," Thornton snarled, lowering his rifle. "The law is on my side." "Is it?" came a new voice. The sheriff rode up, accompanied by several deputies and a distinguished-looking man Virginia didn't recognize. "Judge Parker," Thornton acknowledged, suddenly less confident. "Mr. Thornton," the judge replied coolly, "Sheriff Williams telegraphed me about the situation here. I rode in on the afternoon stage to see for myself what kind of justice you were planning." "Your Honor, this man has interfered with a binding betrothal," Thornton began. "I've reviewed the facts," Judge Parker interrupted. "There was no formal contract, merely a verbal agreement between you and Mr. Ellis, who is now deceased. Miss Ellis has every right to reject your suit." Virginia stepped onto the porch, emboldened by the judge's words. "I never agreed to marry him. My father made that arrangement without my consent." Judge Parker nodded. "In the eyes of the law, Miss Ellis is a free woman who may choose her own husband or choose not to marry at all." He turned to address the gathered men. "Furthermore, any talk of stoning or other such barbaric punishments is not only against the law but against all principles of civilized society. Anyone participating in such an action will face federal charges." Thornton's face darkened with fury, but he recognized defeat. "This isn't the end of it," he warned, wheeling his horse around. His followers, thoroughly cowed by the judge's authority, quickly dispersed. As Thornton and his men rode away, Virginia rushed to Benjamin's side. "You could have been killed," she admonished, tears in her eyes. Benjamin's weathered face softened. "Some things are worth dying for," he said simply. Judge Parker approached them. "Miss Ellis, I apologize for the ordeal you've endured. Frontier justice sometimes veers toward the primitive, I'm afraid." "Thank you for your intervention, Your Honor," Virginia replied. "Don't thank me," the judge said with a slight smile. "Thank your friend here. He telegraphed my office the day you arrived at his ranch, outlining the situation." Virginia looked at Benjamin in surprise. "You did?" He nodded. "I've seen Thornton's type before. I knew we'd need more authority than the local sheriff could provide." As the judge and sheriff prepared to depart, Benjamin invited them to stay for supper, but they declined, needing to return to town before nightfall. "What will happen now?" Virginia asked once they were alone. "That depends on you," Benjamin said. "You're free to go wherever you wish. Start a new life in another town, perhaps." Virginia studied his face, seeing the hope he tried to conceal. "And if I wish to stay? I'd be honored," he replied softly. "But I don't want you to feel obligated because I helped you." Virginia smiled. "Benjamin Owens, do you really think I'd stay out of obligation?" She stepped closer. "These past days have shown me what kind of man you are, kind, principled, brave. The kind of man I could—" She hesitated. "Could what?" He prompted gently. "Could love?" she finished, her cheeks flushing. "If given time." Benjamin took her hands in his. "Time is something I'm happy to give, Virginia. As much as you need." In the weeks that followed, Virginia found purpose at the ranch, helping Elena with household matters and learning about cattle ranching. She discovered she had a talent for bookkeeping and gradually took over managing the ranch's finances. Benjamin taught her to ride properly, not side saddle as she'd been raised, and she reveled in the freedom of galloping across open country. Word reached them that Thornton had left Redemption, moving to San Francisco after selling his holdings. The town, freed from his influence, began to change, becoming more welcoming under new leadership. As summer turned to fall, Virginia and Benjamin's friendship deepened into something more. They spent evenings on the porch, talking about their hopes and dreams. Benjamin spoke of expanding the ranch, breeding better stock. Virginia shared her desire to open a small school for the children of ranch hands and neighboring homesteaders. On a crisp October evening, Benjamin took Virginia on a ride to his favorite spot on the property, a small mesa overlooking the valley, where the sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "It's beautiful," Virginia breathed, taking in the panoramic view. "Not as beautiful as you," Benjamin replied, his usual confidence replaced with nervousness. "Virginia, these past months have been the happiest of my life." Virginia turned to him, her heart quickening. "Mine too." Benjamin took her hands. "I know it hasn't been long, and I promise to give you time, but I find myself falling more in love with you each day." Tears welled in Virginia's eyes. "Benjamin," he dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. "I'm not Thornton. I don't have wealth or influence. All I have is this land, my cattle, and a heart that's completely yours. If you'll have me, I promise to stand between you and any storm life brings." Virginia pulled him to his feet. "The only wealth I need is this," she said, placing her hand over his heart. "Yes, Benjamin Owens, I will marry you. Not because anyone arranged it or because society expects it, but because I choose you freely and completely." Their wedding took place on Christmas Eve, 1879, in the newly built church in Redemption. The town that had once threatened to stone Virginia now celebrated her happiness. Judge Parker returned to officiate, having become a friend and mentor to the couple. Elena and Miguel stood as witnesses, Elena weeping joyfully as Virginia and Benjamin exchanged vows. The church was decorated with evergreens and candles, the scent of pine filling the air as snow fell gently outside. "I promise to stand between you and any harm," Benjamin vowed, echoing his words from that first confrontation. "Not because you need protection, but because you deserve a partner who will face life's challenges at your side." Virginia, radiant in a simple white dress with a crown of winter berries, replied, "And I promise to stand with you, not behind you, as we build our life together. You gave me the freedom to choose, and I choose you now and always." As spring arrived in 1880, Virginia's school became a reality. Benjamin built a small schoolhouse near the ranch, and children from miles around came to learn. Virginia proved to be a natural teacher, firm but kind, encouraging her students to think beyond the limitations of frontier life. Benjamin's ranching innovations paid off, with his breeding program producing hardier cattle that fetched premium prices at market. The ranch expanded, providing employment for more families and becoming a cornerstone of the community. In the summer of 1881, Virginia gave birth to their first child, a daughter they named Elizabeth, after Benjamin's mother. As Benjamin held his daughter for the first time, tears streaming down his face, Virginia watched the man who had once stood alone against a mob, now completely undone by the tiny life they had created together. "She has your courage?" Benjamin whispered, tracing a finger gently along the baby's cheek. "And your strength?" Virginia replied, exhausted but exultant. By 1885, Redemption had transformed from a hardscrabble frontier town into a thriving community. The railroad had arrived, bringing new opportunities and connecting them to the wider world. Virginia's school had grown into a proper academy, with additional teachers and a library funded by Benjamin's increasingly successful ranch. Their family had grown as well, with the addition of a son, James, in 1883, and twins, Sarah and Samuel, in 1885. Their home, once a simple ranch house, had been expanded to accommodate their growing family and frequent visitors. On their 6th wedding anniversary, Benjamin surprised Virginia with a trip to San Francisco, her first journey beyond Arizona territory. They attended the opera, dined in fine restaurants, and walked arm in arm along the waterfront, marveling at the ships from distant lands. One evening, as they strolled through the elegant lobby of their hotel, Virginia froze. Standing across the room, engaged in conversation with several well-dressed businessmen, was Thornton. Benjamin felt her tense and followed her gaze. "We can leave," he whispered. Virginia shook her head. "No, I'm not afraid anymore." As if sensing their presence, Thornton looked up. Recognition dawned in his eyes, followed by a flash of the old anger. For a moment, Virginia feared he might approach, might shatter the perfect happiness she had found. Instead, after a long look, Thornton gave a slight nod of acknowledgement before turning back to his companions. "He's no longer important," Virginia said as they continued their walk. "He has no power over me, over us." Benjamin squeezed her hand. "He never did. You were always stronger than him, stronger than all of them. I just happened to be there when you needed someone to remind you of that strength." Later, in their hotel room overlooking the bay, Virginia sat at the writing desk, penning a letter to Elena about the children. Benjamin came to stand behind her, his hands resting gently on her shoulders. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. "About the path you chose?" Virginia set down her pen and rose to face him. "Not one," she said, wrapping her arms around his waist. "How could I regret choosing love and freedom over fear and obligation?" Benjamin cradled her face in his hands. "6 years ago, I stood between you and those who would harm you. I didn't know then that in saving you, I was saving myself as well. We saved each other," Virginia corrected gently. "And we'll keep doing so every day for the rest of our lives." As they stood together, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, Virginia thought back to that day in Redemption's town square, when she had faced the mob alone until a quiet cowboy with steady eyes had stepped between her and danger. "Thank you for standing between me and the rocks," she whispered. Benjamin smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling with years of happiness. "Always," he promised, before drawing her into a kiss that held all the passion, tenderness, and certainty of their enduring love. In the years that followed, the story of Virginia and Benjamin became something of a legend in Arizona territory, the tale of a woman brave enough to defy convention and a man courageous enough to stand beside her. Their ranch thrived, their children grew strong and independent, and their love deepened with each passing season. And whenever newcomers arrived in what eventually became the town of Owens Crossing, they would hear the story of how the settlement got its start with a bride who refused to be owned, and a cowboy who stood between her and the stones.